welcome to this week's edition of Retire Well, brought to you by the team of Citizen Advisory Group. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and joining me in the studio is financial advisor Pete Samanuk. We're so glad you're joining us today. We are going to be tackling an important question and conversation, which is, what is a financial planner? What is it exactly that they do? And should I consider working with one? Pete, my friend, it's great to be here with you.
It
How
is
are you
great.
this
Yeah,
week?
I'm doing really good. I'm riding solo over here. I'm kind of lonely, but
kind of stealing Kevin's seat a little bit. I love it.
So we might not need him back after today. We'll see.
Well, I always enjoy our times together on set. This will be really fun to have this one-on-one conversation.
Yep.
Well, I'm curious. I know this was a topic that you definitely wanted to share with our viewers, and I think there's probably a lot of confusion out there about our financial services industry in general. And I know there's a lot of folks who have been do-it-yourself investors, but they often are asking themselves the question, should I really be doing this on my own? What is it that a financial planner could do for me that I can't do myself? And really, should I consider working with one? So that's what we're going to unpack today, right?
Yeah, and it is kind of a silly place to start to some degree, and it seems very basic, but I think it's like that question in the room that it's almost like everybody's thinking. You know, when you're in like a classroom and you're thinking of a question, you're like, man, I don't want to ask this because I don't want to sound stupid.
Right,
but no one will ask the question, but secretly 90% of the people in that room are thinking the same thing.
Correct.
I get the question, like, what even, and even friends of mine, right? My closest friends and family, what do you do for a living?
What is it that
What
you do?
is a financial planner?
Right.
And, you know, at its very base level, and I think a lot of people think like a financial planner, or you're going to go meet with this advisor, and they're just going to like sell you something, right? Where our job is just to talk about the stock market and invest your money in the stock market, and hopefully you don't lose money and you make more money and you have more money over time. And yeah, that's part of it, but really a financial planner and a good qualified financial advisor is someone that's helping you organize your finances, right? It's like they're helping you organize all these pieces and these things that you have into one sound, comprehensive plan to make sure that you're meeting your financial goals, no matter what that might be.
And kind of orchestrating all these pieces fitting together and working together.
Exactly, right? And so I talked about investing the money, and that's important, right? The investment returns that we get and the stuff that we have, that's an important piece of it. But I'm here to tell you that's about 20% of the game, right? We do need an investment strategy, but we also need a retirement planning strategy that includes our Social Security and our cash flow projections and what our pensions and where we're going to get paid in retirement. And we also need an insurance plan that's going to incorporate our health insurance, right? Pre-65, Medicare, anywhere in between that. You know, our life insurance plan, our home and auto, our long-term care insurance planning. We need someone helping us coordinate our estate planning and what does our, you know, afterlife, what does that kind of look like for us? And then as well as our tax planning too, right? So those 5 major areas are kind of what we need to focus on. And again, not just the investment management, which is, I think, the biggest misconception is that what you do for a living is just invest people's money. And again, that's just such a small part of it as a financial planner.
An important part, but to your point, it's just one small piece of the overall thing. But correct me if I'm wrong, I would venture to say that the reason why there is that misconception is that there's a lot of people out there who call themselves financial advisors who only focus on the investment management piece. And that's a little bit different than what you're talking about and what you do, which is you are engaging in the comprehensive, holistic financial planning process.
Correct. So this is a great segue, is that most people think of like an old stockbroker of the old, right? Where your grandparents went in and they met with their stockbroker, what was called a stockbroker, I suppose, and you said, I have this $10,000 to invest, and they're like, okay, well, go invest it. They made a commission, and it didn't really matter to that stockbroker whether or not your grandparents made money, right? They're like, that stockbroker did well for me because they threw a dart at a board and happened to pick the right stock to some degree. And that's where it's so important to understand under today's rule with fiduciary standard is why fiduciary standard is so important.
Yes.
You have to have a planner and an advisor that is literally working in you and your family's best interest, and not just in the best interest of themselves or the firm or possibly the shareholders that they work for as well, right? So when you talked about, going and working with an advisor, I think 90% of people in this industry, not that they're good or bad, you just have to understand the rules that somebody plays under, are really just going to look to invest your money, have some sort of strategy for that, and not looking at the holistic financial plan, which is what we really hang our hat on at Citizen Advisory Group.
And I know you have this interesting analogy to go along with this conversation about a butcher versus a dietitian. You want to share about that?
Yeah, so I'm going to try to be articulate about this and explain it. It is my favorite analogy when somebody kind of asks, what does a qualified financial planner do? And so think about if you are an individual and you are looking to make dinner for yourself that evening maybe, right? Or you're gonna set out a meal plan for that week, and you go and talk to the butcher, okay? And you say to the butcher, hey, I want to make some dinners for the week. And you say, hey, we have these steaks over here that are on special. Okay, we got steaks, they're $13.99 a pound, and they're gonna say, okay, well, I'll make steak for the rest of the week. Okay, the butcher is just gonna sell you either whatever's on sale or whatever you're looking to achieve right there in that moment, right? They're selling you something.
Yep.
Okay, now, let's suppose you went to your dietitian and you said, hey, I'm looking to set myself up for a meal plan for the rest of the week or for dinner tonight. What is the dietitian gonna do? They're gonna tell you, okay, your cholesterol's high, we're trying to cut down on your sodium, maybe you're a little bit gluten sensitive, something along those lines. And the dietitian is not gonna say, well, go and buy all of these steaks. Not that steaks are bad, I mean, I think they're good and they fit into a lot of diet plans,
right.
But the dietitian is gonna be so much more customized to what you're trying to do in your specific individual situation, as opposed to the butcher is just gonna say, oh, you wanna buy this? Here it is. And I think that's, again, going back to the analogy I'm trying to make. The stockbroker of the old was the butcher. You went in and said, hey, I want to buy this stock or do this. They sold it to you, whether or not it made sense to you. The dietitian is looking at you as an individual in your specific situation to make sure that what you're buying and what you're doing is in your best interest.
That's a really helpful analogy. I also, as you were talking, it made me think the dietitian's going to look at all the different ingredients.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just going to be like slap a steak on your plate for dinner.
Yeah,
right?
because that's gonna serve its purpose. You're gonna not be hungry anymore, right? But it's not gonna solve the bigger issues you might have with cholesterol, sodium, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
I don't know a
You're
lot
not
about
a dietitian, you're a financial planner, but I followed the analogy,
yeah.
so that's great. So. Well, I think, again, looking at that, the difference is that you always say this, that you and the team of Citizen Advisory Group, you don't sell products. So talk about what you do offer to people. Yeah.
And what we do strive to be at Citizen Advisory Group, what sets us apart is that we are not product salesmen, right? What we sell is advice. Now, there's gonna be some product that's involved with that, right? We're gonna have some product that we're going to recommend potentially, or some portfolio strategy or some specific strategy around your Social Security or tax planning. But really what we look at, what we're selling is not product or some stock market related strategy. It's sound, comprehensive financial advice that's helping you meet your retirement goals for you and your family, no matter what that might be.
For sure. I think another analogy that I've heard you share that I think is appropriate for this segment is you've often compared having a financial planner to having a company having a controller or a chief financial officer. So how does that compare to what you do?
How many analogies can I make, right? I mean, I get the point at some point. But no, and this is a show that I wrote, so I'm kind of teasing on myself there a little bit because I wrote these in there. But I've thought about this often too, about what my role or what our role as a financial advisor is in somebody's life. And it's the equivalent of if you have a company that you've started or any company that you work with and they have 100 employees or I don't care if it's a huge multi-billion-dollar company, they have a chief financial officer or a controller. And what does that controller do? They run the books, right? They're making sure that the purchases are matching with the sales and that the company's profitable and that the company is on pace to meet their financial goals for what they are, right? And every single company, a sound company, has a controller or a CFO, and I think that's where we fit into people's lives as well. It's like hiring your own personal CFO or your own personal controller to run your family's finances and make sure that you're meeting your financial goals.
Awesome. Well, I love the analogies. I think they're very relatable and helpful, especially for this conversation. Now, I know you're offering the complimentary retirement checkpoint review for viewers of today's show. Why don't you just briefly summarize what folks can expect when they call into the show and connect with you to come in and receive that?
Yeah. So what we're offering for callers today is just a complimentary retirement planning checkpoint review. And that can be something as simple as maybe we have a preliminary phone call where you are talking to either myself or one of our advisors at the office, and we're going to kind of start to unpack the bags and figure out where are we trying to get, right? We're going to talk about the tax planning, the investment planning, the estate planning, the insurance planning, the retirement planning, all those different areas, and that's what we're offering for people today is either a sit-down appointment or a complimentary phone call to start to figure out are those areas that we're looking to help you and are we a good fit.
Wonderful. Pete, thank you so much. I'm excited to continue this conversation with you. And to our viewers at home, that number to call to schedule yours is 866-630-1675. Or if you'd prefer to connect online, simply scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well for your very own complimentary retirement checkpoint review. We've talked a lot so far on today's show about what it is that a financial planner does. When we come back, we're going to address the question, why should you consider working with one? Stay with us.
As a youth, I spent my summer months on the construction sites with my family. I think I learned early on the value of hard work. Ultimately, though, I was led into the financial services world where I joined my brother Jeff.
You know, I think many people think that the financial piece is just so prevalent and the most important component, but there's just more to it than that. It's about the experiences, it's about the relationships, it's about the life that our clients are living.
They've got things set up so that the biggest decisions I have to make are whether to use a 9-iron or a pitching wedge, and what is my cocktail this evening.
It's our family coming together with your family. It's your financial pieces coming together to have a coordinated plan. It's our community coming together to keep that social connection.
I like the family atmosphere that they have. I think they treat everybody like they're part of the family of Citizen Advisory Group. I just love that they take care of us.
I think we pride ourselves on the comprehensive services that we offer, which starts with the holistic financial planning.
That retirement checkpoint view is going to be a full review across the areas of investments, your income, taxes, insurance, and your legacy and estate plan to make sure that you have a coordinated plan and it is tailored to you, the individual.
We build all of this together to get the most out of your retirement so that you can have the retirement that you've always dreamt of.
Well, welcome back to Retire Well. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, here with financial advisor Pete from Citizen Advisory Group. And today's show is all about what does a financial planner do? What do they really do day in and day out? And most importantly, should you consider working with one? And so that's what we're going to be talking about now. In the first segment, you did such a great job, Pete, of explaining what it is you do for folks at a very high comprehensive level. You know, I think, of course, we have to look at what this means for our viewers. Why should someone watching, why might they consider working with a financial planner?
Yeah, so again, when it comes to financial and retirement planning, there's just a lot of risks out there that people don't even understand that they have. And I'm going to try my best to kind of unpack some of those risks. But there's things that you're not even thinking about that you don't know that could happen, that might happen because of legislative things, because of
rule changes, right?
Rule changes, just all the different things. And that's something I didn't say. A planner, you know, we help navigate current law changes. There's been major legislation changes lately.
We stay on top of it.
Right, we stay on top of it. We're required to do it with continuing education just to keep our licensing up to date and make sure we're meeting that fiduciary standard. But people have risks that they don't even realize that they have. And what I always like to say to people is that when it comes to retirement, let's say that. So what might be, Chris, and I'm throwing you on the spot a little bit. What's a hobby that you might have? What's something that you've done a lot of times in your life that you love doing?
I love horseback riding.
You love horseback riding.
Yes.
Okay, so this is great, actually. So let's think about the very first time that you ever rode that horse. Okay, you rode that horse for the first time. How did that go, if you even remember?
So it's a long, funny story. I was actually 22 months the first time I ever got on a pony.
Okay.
Apparently,
so you might not remember that.
I don't remember
You've
that
seen
one,
pictures.
but I have vivid memories of age 3 when and then the first
Yeah,
time I ever took
yeah.
control of the horse on my own was age 6. And that was, I can remember that.
Yeah.
Because, it was a little bumpy at first.
Okay, right, a little bumpy
Yeah.
at first. And you might have made a mistake, or you fell off that
Yep.
horse, or you did something that just scared the horse,
Yep.
and
Oh,
something
plenty of
happened. And that was the
times. Yeah.
first time. And the second time that you did that, you said, oh, I shouldn't do that again. But then by the 1,000th time that you've actually rode a horse, you said, I've got this. I know everything to look out for. I know what to avoid and not
to
do.
anticipate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how retirement planning is too.
Yep.
And that's why I like to say you get one chance to retire properly and to retire well. And if you don't do it right, you might not get a second chance, right? And you cannot afford to make a mistake that you're like, oh, I didn't know that was going to happen, or I should have seen this coming. You get one chance to do it right. And going back to horseback riding, or if I'm baking a sourdough loaf and I made a mistake, I can just throw that sourdough loaf away and say, oh, I'm going to try this again.
Sure,
and I'm going to
sure.
learn from the mistakes I made. You get one chance to do it right in retirement planning. And by extension, I have retired at Citizen Advisory Group with our clients. I've retired 1,000 times, even though I've never retired. I'm
Yourself,
here working,
right. You've helped
I'm
other
here
people
working
do it.
today, actually, right?
Yeah.
But by extension, I have helped someone retire 1,000 times. And I understand, and we understand that this is the first time that you're going to do it. So you are nervous. You don't know what to expect. It is nerve-wracking stuff. You have to have a qualified planner that's been down that route thousands of times.
For sure. Who can really anticipate, look ahead, see the potential pitfalls, and help folks avoid making those
Correct,
same
because
mistakes,
we've seen
right?
them, right?
Yep.
We've seen them all dozens of times.
For sure. What are some of the top areas that you think about in that context? When people come in and meet with you for the first time, I know a lot of times folks just want a second opinion, right? Maybe they've been a do-it-yourself investor
Yep,
and they're coming in and they're saying, okay, can you just kind of look over my stuff, make sure I'm on track?
Yeah.
What do you find are often common areas that are overlooked, not anticipated, not planned for, and
Yep.
that folks aren't even aware of?
And something that's really relevant today in today's marketplace is, and I think the thing that most people actually think about, and it is very relevant, is really taking on too much investment risk or market risk. Is that if we're counting on the stock market or our 401ks or our retirement savings plans to provide us with our lifestyle and our needs, and that's where we're going to get paid from on top of our Social Securities,
Right.
is taking too much market risk on. I can think of folks that I've met with in the past couple weeks, and they are, they have some challenges. They're in their late 50s, which by American standards is an early retirement, quote unquote.
Sure, but they're in that retirement red zone.
They're in that retirement
right?
red zone, but they're ready to retire. She is retiring at the end of this school year. He would like to be done working in the next 10 to 12 months, and they're in their late 50s. So we have to have
for
a
them.
right. It's awesome. They've
Right.
saved enough money. They've done a good job. They've got pensions, but it comes with challenges. And one of the things that really stuck out to me is, and I'm looking at this, I'm like, I can barely even wait to get you some principal protection or some form of safety with not all of the money, but some of it. It couldn't even wait till our next appointment. I was kind of so anxious about it. But 95% of their money was in stocks. And that's what happened to people in 2008
Yes.
and 2001, is that we had too much stock market risk. And we were counting on the stock market to kind of come back. And they actually met with another advisor, and his advice was just to stay the course. And I'm telling you, you just have to get some safety built in there and more retirement appropriate vehicles
Right.
when you're in that retirement red zone.
Well, and I think too, because so much of our industry, that story doesn't shock me, because so much of the industry is focused on the accumulation years when you are working and saving and putting that money away, and growth is the objective. That is the goal, right?
Yep.
Take the risk, get the growth. But there comes a certain point, that shift that needs to happen when you're approaching and entering retirement, where you can't afford to suffer those large losses. You
Correct.
have to preserve what you've accumulated, and that's why you all specialize as financial planners as retirement income planners too, right? You're figuring out how to take that lump sum and turn it into income.
Yeah, and not only, again, going back to, so some of the risks I'm thinking about are market risk, right? People taking on too much market risk.
Yep.
People not planning properly for inflation risk.
Right.
People not planning properly for survivorship risk. That's a big one, is
talk
that
about
you're
that,
not
yeah.
you're not planning for the untimely death of either yourself or a spouse. And I understand that. It's
not
not
fun to
something
think about,
It's not
right?
fun to think about. It's not fun to plan for. It's never going to happen happen to us. But that's one of the biggest risks and one of the most underserved areas that I run into time and time again, is that people are not properly planning for something happening to a spouse.
Right.
Okay, so you have inflation mixed in that, you have tax risk.
Yes.
Okay, what is tax with legislation, and what do future tax rates look like? And then you have like healthcare risk, right? Long-term care and nursing home risk is probably the most major one. I'm not going to get too much detail into that today, but I throw all those risks, okay, again, just to summarize: tax risk, inflation risk, market risk, healthcare risk, and survivorship risk, okay? Usually we can kind of weather the storm when one of those things happens, but what happens when we're taking too much market risk on, okay, and we have now a 30% loss in our accounts, and then in the middle of that, inflation's going up, and then all of a sudden tax rates go up, and then our spouse dies, right? And then we have a healthcare problem in conjunction of that. That's when things that look really rosy and really good in retirement can turn very poor and very sour quickly, is when 2 or 3 or 4 of those risks start to compound on top of each other.
Right.
Those are the kinds of risks we're talking about in retirement that people just don't realize they have.
And that you're able to help prevent on the front end with the proper planning in place.
Yeah, correct.
Right?
And the important thing you said there is on the front end, right? Is that by the time some of these things start happening, we better have a plan in place for how we're going to approach them. You know, we have to have the snow tires on before the storm, right?
Sure.
We don't put the snow tires on right in the middle of the storm, because by the time we're in it, we're already in it. And when you talk about on the front end and planning, that's why today for all of our callers, we're offering that complimentary retirement checkpoint review, is to make sure that we do have the proper planning on the front end, and just starting to have a casual conversation on what does a financial advisor do and what could that look like in our lives.
Wonderful. Pete, thank you so much. Very well said. To our viewers at home, that number to call to schedule your complimentary retirement checkpoint review is 866-630-1675. Or again, you're welcome to scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. We'll be back with more on today's episode right after this.
Do you own an annuity? Are you aware of what type of annuity you own? For years, annuities have been considered a cornerstone of retirement planning, but they're not all created equal, and your current annuity might not be serving your retirement goals. The good news is, rising interest rates could mean better guarantees and better benefits for your annuity. If your annuity is not working for you, would you like to know sooner than later? Call now for your complimentary annuity review.
As individuals, we strive for better, from a better house, to a better career, to a better life for our kids. But when it comes to your retirement, what does better mean to you? More income? A flexible lifestyle? Better solutions? A better retirement begins with a plan. To get your complimentary written financial plan, call the number you see here. You only retire once. This is your opportunity to plan for better. Imagine not having to face your retirement with the same old corporate solutions as everyone else. In these economic times, you deserve a fresh perspective that includes a personalized retirement income plan, investment portfolio analysis, and tax map from an independent fiduciary advisor whose focus is on you. Call the number you see here to schedule your complimentary review.
Welcome back to Retire Well. I'm Kristen Oakley here with Pete, financial advisor with Citizen Advisory Group. And today we've just had a very awesome conversation about what is it that a financial planner actually does, why might you need one, and now we're going to be talking about what should you look for when you're looking to hire the right financial planner for you in your situation. So Pete, I know that's a lot to cover and you've done such a great job of explaining, especially in the last segment, why someone might need a financial planner. There's so many risks out there, but I know that I've heard from folks, a lot of times they're hesitant because they don't know who they can trust, they don't know what to look for. There's a lot of confusion with different designations and titles, so walk us through.
That's another thing I didn't think about.
Yeah, walk us through what someone should consider when they're looking to hire a financial planner.
Yeah, I mean, so if it's me looking for an advisor, I might hire someone with dark hair, a little bit of gray mixed in there, a beard, possibly a blue jacket to some degree. Those are the things I would be looking for in an advisor. But on top of that, the biggest thing we'll go back to what we're talking about is fiduciary standard in today's marketplace is a must.
Yes.
Right? And I'm not here to say we're the only fiduciaries in town or we're the only people that work under that standard, but fiduciary standard, which is somebody that has to legally to hold the licensing that they can. Okay, I'm a fiduciary standard on at least 2 different levels, possibly 3 for the licenses and the designations that I hold. Some of it is truly putting your interests ahead of theirs in the firm.
Right,
They legally have got to do it.
You have the legal and ethical obligation to always serve the client's best interests. You don't work for anybody else other than the client.
Yep, correct. I'm literally working for clients. I don't work for shareholders. I don't have sales quotas. I don't have a manager that can tell me what to do or how to do it.
Yep.
I'm literally working for a client and putting their interests ahead of ours.
Yep.
Okay, so that's to me,
number one.
fiduciary standard is number one. It is just a must in today's marketplace, in our professional opinion.
For sure. What's next on that list?
Okay, so the other thing I would kind of talk about is just kind of fee transparency, right? Pay attention to how are the fees transparent? And we don't do a whole lot of talking about fees on this show, I feel like, and I didn't really talk a whole lot about it today. But you have to make sure that the advisor, which is a requirement in fiduciary standard, is that fee transparency is 100%. You know what the advisor's making, you know what you're paying them, you know what you're paying to own the investments that you have. All right, we have to have fee transparency to even claim to call ourselves a fiduciary.
Well, and when you're with a fiduciary, not only is there transparency, but there's no conflict of interest because your interests are aligned, right?
Right, yeah. And so fee transparency, big thing there, what Kristen's talking about is that making sure that our interests are aligned with yours, okay? Is that when you're doing better, we're doing better, okay? And maybe if you're not having such a good year, that might mean that we're taking a pay cut as well, just depending on how it's structured. Very important for fee transparency on top of that fiduciary standard.
For sure. I also think, and there's a note here that I think is important to understand, I think a good financial planner does a lot of listening and asks a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Because they want to really get to know who they're helping so they know how to best serve them.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's just important to pay attention to, is that advisor asking questions about your goals, what's important to you? Are they asking questions about your family and where you're trying to get? Or do they just kind of want to start that conversation about how much money do you have? Or are we going to talk about the job market or the economy? No, it's really important to kind of make sure you're sitting with an advisor that's listening to you. Are they listening? Are they paying attention? Does your specific individual situation seem important to that advisor? That's a good place to start too.
Well, I think, Pete, this has been a really valuable discussion. And if you're at home asking yourself these questions and you want to see what it's like to work with that type of financial planner, we encourage you to pick up the phone, call the number you see on the bottom of your screen, and schedule your complimentary retirement checkpoint review. 866-630-1675 is the number to call. Be blessed, and we'll see you next time here on Retire Well.